Welcome to Ross Perspective. In this video, I talk to the amazingly talented musician and singer Molly Rogers, who's worked with and performed alongside some of the greatest composers in the industry, including Hans Zimmer and Ramin Djawadi. Her credits include the likes of The Lion King, The Mandalorian, and many more. How did you get into music?
I started playing music when I was almost 4. We had like a upright piano in our house, and I kind of remember being obsessed with honestly playing tunes from movies that I was watching. One of my favorite all-time movie scores is Return to Oz by David Shire. If you haven't listened to it, it's kind of, I guess, obscure because it's like this old, it's like an 80s Disney movie, but it's like kind of a cult classic.
Yeah.
But it's got one of the most beautiful scores of all time. And I remember plinking it out on the piano and my mom being like, how are you doing that? But also music runs in my family. Like my grandmother, was our local town piano teacher. My mom played piano and sang. So I started piano lessons with my sisters, and then didn't love piano. And my dad always wanted his 3 girls. There's 3 of us to play violin, and I was his last hope as the youngest. So I think they put on public access television orchestra thing. Was like, oh, do you want to try violin? But you're 4 or 5, so at that age you're like, sure, I'll do anything. And fell in love with it. I've been playing ever since.
Yeah, that's good. Sound like naturally gifted at it.
I always had a love for it, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So you do quite a bit of singing as well.
Yeah.
Do you have a kind of preference on one or the other?
I mean, I really love it all. I mean, violin, I think I know is the thing that I've studied and worked the hardest on. So I'll always have this real attachment to that and feel like that's the thing that I'm most connected to, just because that was, I drove 4-hour round trip to violin lessons, and did all these practicing, was homeschooled and all of these things to really dedicate to violin. But once I started singing more, I had done some singing with my grandmother, who, along with being the local piano teacher, was an opera singer. And I was just always more shy about singing, and always thought, no, I'm meant to play violin. And it kind of wasn't until I really moved out here that I started opening myself up to singing more. And now I really, really love it, and I feel a lot more confident with it. But it took me a lot longer to get to that feeling of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it becomes a lot easier once you know that you're good, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you don't know, you're just they tell you can sing when you're a kid, that you're just like, no, I'm just I'm gonna stick with what I know.
Yeah. So kind of on that though, but do you ever get stage fright?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
I used to deal with it a lot worse, and sometimes it'll still pop up when I'm not expecting it. I think some level of stage fright is a good thing, because it gives you the pump you need to kind of get on stage and do it. But yeah, I've dealt with a lot of stage fright, and one thing that really helped me was working with my therapist. She's really big into visualization, and so I know I was struggling with stage fright a lot on the first Hans Zimmer tour in 2017, and really just I was honestly, that whole tour I was really frustrated myself, because I just felt I was having the time of my life, don't get me wrong, but there were just some aspects to it where I feel like I wasn't fully letting go. And and so when I went on Game of Thrones, tour the following year, I guess. One of the things that I did was this stunt where they put me in a harness and lifted me 35 feet in the air.
Oh, wow.
And I have a pretty big fear of heights.
Oh, right.
So I was pretty nervous going into rehearsals, and I worked with my therapist to kind of like do all these like really positive visualizations from really start to finish, from the time I leave my, hotel room on tour to the time I'm like getting on stage and like putting my bow on the strings. And I found it really, really helpful. Not just to like visualize it going well, but to connect to the joy of the playing and remember that I'm not really just doing. I think the number one thing that helped me get through stage fright was remembering that I'm not really doing it for myself. I'm doing it because like I know what it feels like to be in an audience, feeling moved by music and wanting to like share that with other people. So that was the number one thing, is like connecting to the joy of like, this isn't for me, this is for like the connectivity of the experience for everyone.
That makes sense. And so you mentioned like Hans Zimmer and like his tours, and you've obviously toured with like a few other people. How do you and worked with them as well, how do you like go about connecting with those people to then work with them?
It's pretty much all been recommendations. Sometimes I don't even know how I meet people, and so I'll get a call sometimes and I'll have no idea how they got my information. For Hans, for example, I knew his cellist, Tina Guo, and Tina and I had been on a previous tour, which I had auditioned for way back in 2014 for this Japanese artist named Yoshiki. And so we did like a 10-country tour together one summer and became friends, and we were definitely loved her, but we weren't like super close. But then when she found out that there was an opening in the Hans Zimmer band, she recommended me, and I went in for an audition and luckily got the job. And like for Game of Thrones, Ramin was looking for a violinist and Hans recommended me as well. So it just kind of like keeps going from there.
That's great. And so like on these tours, you'll obviously do like the same or a very similar show like lots of times. Can that ever become like quite fatiguing? And kind of like, how do you keep that fresh?
I want it, like, it seems like it would, but my honest answer is it's not for me.
That's fair.
Yeah, like with all of these shows, it's like such music that I love so much, and it's generally like really high energy. The Han show is high energy. Game of Thrones like is high energy. It's like I even did this musical with Sting, and it was so beautiful that I just don't get sick of it. And especially you're in a new place all the time, or if you're in the same place, it's a new audience, so there's different energy every night. And that's just one thing I don't really struggle with.
No, that's fair enough. I guess like, because like you said, it is a really like high energy show. I saw the one in Manchester. So that was really good, and I imagine you get like quite a big adrenaline rush.
Totally.
It's
so fun.
Sense.
It's so fun.
No, it does seem it. And I'm sure this has happened to like loads of people, but has anything ever gone wrong within like the orchestra while you're performing?
Anything ever gone wrong? I'm sure it has, absolutely. I mean, when you're putting on a show of that magnitude, there's always something technical that could go wrong. And we have a great crew, so if something goes wrong, I almost guarantee that the audience wouldn't know about it. There's things like because we use in-ears, basically like we're all on a click and you can see like the streamers so that everything goes really smoothly. And there have been a couple of occasions where like the whole system has crashed and all of a sudden there's nothing in our ears and we're just like playing live, baby. I mean, we're always playing live, but it's like, it's when there's nothing to connect you to this huge arena and the sound of like is like coming back at you and it's just like this chaos of sound with nothing in your ears. It can be crazy, but they have like a backup to a backup, so if that goes, then they'll kick up the backup and then the next thing. So yeah, I think things can go wrong. It's usually a technical thing, but then the crew will fix it and we can go on performing.
Do you have any like techniques when stuff goes wrong to kind of like, you know, sort of like center yourself and be like, right, let's get this done? Or
yeah, the show must go on. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all been doing this long enough to know like if something you just honestly you keep going. Or I always look to our musical director. In the case of Hans, it's Nick Lenny Smith, and see what he says, you know. And sometimes if it's like beyond repair, which is really rare, we'll kind of stop and we'll start again or something. But like we always have a leader there who's kind of tell us like, all right, nope, we're gonna keep going, or like we're at this bar, we're gonna do this. And like I said, I think a lot of times the audience wouldn't even know, and that's our job, is to stay professional and keep playing as if nothing's happening.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You've worked with loads of musicians. Are there any musicians that inspire you?
Oh, everyone I'm on stage with inspire me. I know that's like a cheesy thing to say, but
no, that makes sense.
That's seriously the best part of my job is, and I like for the Hans show that we just finished, I mean, that one's the most fresh in my mind, obviously, since we had that 3-month tour. Literally every night I thought to myself, like, I'm so lucky to be on stage with like what I consider to be like the best musicians in the world, and to be able to connect with them. And I admire them all so much for how hard they work and just like how much they also love their craft. And yeah, it is true that like every single night I just am inspired by my colleagues.
No, that's fair enough. I guess because when I saw it, it did feel like it was like every person on stage kind of had like their moment. Like no one was lost in it. Everyone stood out, which is really good.
Yeah, Hans really believes in that, and he believes in all of us, and wants us all to have an opportunity to shine a little bit if we can.
You've done music for films and TV and for games. Do you have any like standout projects that you've worked on that you really love?
I was thinking to myself the other day, I need to start like keeping a log of all the things I've been doing. Because I am so grateful to have this job. It's like I grew up, as I said at the beginning, loving film scores and television scores. And once I started doing it, I remember just kind of being in disbelief. And I still, every day, I never want to get to that point where I feel like jaded or over it. I want to feel as excited walking into a scoring session as the first time I did. I mean, I always love working on a Hans project or a Ramin project. Ramin Djawadi is the composer for Westworld or Game of Thrones. So I love working on all of that stuff, but anything's fun.
No, that's fair enough. I guess it's hard to like pick a favorite when you're loving more.
Even the little indie projects I do are fun, because I do a lot of arranging for strings, and I have a string quartet. So I really love writing and making music happen on strings. And so I do like recording from home or stuff like that. So I really, any project is great when you get to bring what I do into the mix.
There's lots of different kind of genres of music within the music you make and perform.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular genre that you like prefer doing, maybe?
Well, other than film music,
Yeah.
I grew up in Kentucky, which is I consider to be like the South in America. So I grew up in this sort of like folk, gypsy jazz, sort of bluegrass, but fiddling, more like folk fiddling group. And so I often will hear from producers when I'm in a session, like a solo session, like, oh, I'm hearing a little bit of like fiddle flair or like Celtic flair in your music, and it's totally accidental, like 99% of the time. Yeah. But I really like when I can bring that out. And I got to do some of that, like, as I mentioned earlier, I was on this show called The Last Ship that Sting wrote and performed in, and it's this musical, and I got to do a lot of like fiddling in that, and I don't get to do that as much anymore, so I really enjoy it when I can break those skills out and it's wanted, not like, hey, could you make that a little less country?
Yeah, so it's like back to your roots, I guess. Like,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned to improv and stuff, because I used to be really hardcore like classical music snob, and which is funny because a lot of us violinists, we start with this program called the Suzuki method, and it's basically learning by ear. And then once you stop doing that, it's just very much like the notes on the page for so long. And I was really, that was just it until I was about like 12 or 13, I want to say, and which still seems young, but like I was just really serious and you know, really into it. And then one of my friends who is a fiddle player in that group in Kentucky was like, oh, come jam with us. And I remember being like terrified. I came back from the party and was like, that was horrible. I can't ever do that again. I'm never doing that again. And then she had double booked herself for performance and asked me to cover for her. So I started playing with the group more, and they were really encouraging, like, let loose, let go. It's just about feeling it. And that was kind of honestly like life-changing for me, because that was what helped me learn how to perform even from the notes on the page, and also helped me have more of a complex career out here, because now I can go to a session and I don't have to have notes on a page. They can just sing it at me and I can play it back by hearing it, or, you know, coming up, you know, improv on the spot or something like that.
That's amazing that you're able to do that.
It's fortunate. It's fun.
No, I imagine it will be, just to be able to just start playing out of nowhere. I saw you did a Carpool Karaoke with Kelly Clarkson. What was that like? Because I imagine it's quite weird playing the violin in the front seat of a car. A different experience.
That was a really fun, goofy experience. It was a surprise, like showing up. She had like a date night in the car, I think, and what they do is that I was in a car following them, and then we like stopped, and I like hid behind a bush or something on the side of the road. And then James Corden got out and was like, okay, go now. And we had planned for me to play Claire de Lune, Debussy. And it was so funny. I think the hardest thing for me was keeping a straight face the whole time, because she just thought it was hilarious, and she was so tickled and like could not stop laughing herself. So then I was like trying to keep it together while I'm like squished playing in the front seat of this car. I also had like a mute on my instrument so it wouldn't be overpowering, because it's loud. You'd be surprised. A violin can get loud, especially in a car.
In a car, I imagine it's pretty loud.
That was a really fun experience.
That must be That must have been strange, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Obviously, you've worked with all these other musicians. Is there anyone that you've been quite starstruck by?
Ooh, that's a great question. um, yeah, I kind of want to say like all of them. Not starstruck to the point where I hope there would be no disrespect or anything like that, but mostly just the ultimate respect. I mean, Hans, who I consider a dear friend now, and Ramin also I consider a dear friend. Like, they have been my heroes, so getting to work with them is a dream come true every time I get to be in a room together. But honestly, I respect everyone that I work with and really admire them. Even if it's a genre that I'm not super well versed in, there's a reason why they are so popular. There's a reason why they're able to do what they do, and it's because they're really, really good at it. And I'm not here for the whole oh, they're just famous because of XYZ. I think that everyone who gets there for a good reason, and I am just lucky to help be a part of that sometimes.
So it's more like you have a respect for the craft, I guess.
Absolutely.